Welcome back to part two of in our next episode of this podcast for the Mesa Verde group, where we're just talking now about really, we just wrapped up a legislative session. We had one whole session. Governor Newsom, signed all those bills, vetoed 123 of the bills that were at his desk. The governor has one more year in office. Clearly, we all know he has his eyes on the presidency, right? Our higher office, and that has to be the highest office he could probably seek. So, as advocates, what does this mean for you? Is there any bills that were vetoed or that maybe got signed into law that now there's like a part two for you? What are you thinking about going into this next year now that this has officially been closed as our legislative session for 2025?
I mean, I think we've been talking about this. This has been an issue that's been happening since the pandemic. With that, we need to make the change to average daily enrollment, or average enrollment as opposed to average daily attendance. I also think we're going to continue to need to do a lot more as it relates to protecting families, because I think we did schools, we begrudgingly, which is good, did childcare facilities, but I also think we need to think about the fiscal impacts that ICE immigration has had on people's lives. I mean, people aren't going to work as much as they are.
That's right.
And I think we need to really, really, like, at a time like this, when the federal government is doing things to cut core programs that affect people's livelihoods, we know that crime is probably going to start to go up. It actually has been going down, but they keep talking about it as though it's like the all-time high. But that's, again, propaganda from the media. But I think we're going to potentially see crime increase because crime correlates to poverty. And a lot of the changes that the Trump administration is doing is creating poverty. Is plunging people that are already struggling deeper and deeper into poverty. And we as a state need to be willing to do the hard thing. Be it generate revenue to pay for this, generate revenue. You need to do it. We need to be ready to address poverty in like we've never done before, because the federal government, more than any other time, is directly interested in ruining people's life, and we need to be there as California to backfill to the greatest extent possible.
Yeah, and I just want to add on to the list of things is you bring up a good point, and unemployment is on a rise.
Yep.
There's so many people who are unemployed. What does that mean for their homes? Like, are people going to be losing their homes?
Yep.
Is there going to be another housing crisis? A list of foreclosures? People being evicted? People not being able to afford where they live? And I think because housing was a priority for Newsom when he started, I wonder how he's going to want to close the loop on that issue, or how he wants to address it or cement his legacy, right? Because it was something he ran on, and I know that that's something going to be of critique for him as he goes into the pursuit of higher office.
Yeah, I think another thing is also holding your elected officials to accountable, and holding these members and senators and the governor accountable, because they cried, screamed, and kicked about affordability at the start of the year. We had rent caps bills that's affordability. We had other various bills that were trying to address that. We had like price gouging, those sorts of things. I mean, a few years ago, we had the excise cap on gas companies who are and have been price gouging since the pandemic. And that never ended up happening. It should have. But we need to start and then we're also thinking about when we're, as a state, if we have a budget deficit, and we're looking, and the first thought is, let's look at human services and cut that. A few years ago, when we had a very large deficit, we cut $1 billion. We cut our entire social safety net backfill, which about $1 billion, which was designed for a moment like this, and we no longer have it. It was designed for when people are now at a higher rate than we've been anticipating for previous years. When more people are unemployed, they need CalWorks, they need CalFresh, they need all sorts of things. We had $1 billion set aside to make sure more people will be able to access it and maintain the same level of benefits. Mind you, the benefits aren't good enough right now, but that was at least something. We got rid of that entirely.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you said that, because I actually had a friend reach out and says, like, okay, as a result of the government shutdown, is it opportunity we can use our safety net reserve with the state to backfill the leak? And I was just like, what reserve?
Yeah,
we took it 2 years ago.
We fully depleted it. We have not put money back into this reserve. And so it does put us in a really tight spot as a result of this federal shutdown, because we're at the start of the fiscal year. We have no money for the state to actually backfill this because we don't have a reserve. Yep. So it really puts a lot of the pressure on this federal government to ensure that we actually pass some type of funding for our programs to stay funded. WIC, SNAP, these are very crucial, vital programs for our families who are experiencing not only food insecurity, but poverty. And this is, when you think about how we experience poverty, the first thing you cut from your resources is food, because you have to pay for rent. Because at least providing a roof over the head of your child and your family is vital. Maybe you start skipping meals. Maybe you start skipping meals throughout the week. And this is the very real situations and decisions our families are being have been thinking about, not only as a result of the economy, like Carol was saying, but just in general. Like, we should not be playing with people's lives when we decide to stop, pause, fund, cut a policy program such as public benefits, food assistance. And so, and just going further into this whole the shutdown, right? Like, I mean, we're all on the precipice of potentially seeing one of the most devastating impacts to our safety net, like, within weeks. And I think it's scary to think that there's a lot more at play than just wanting to meet the needs of our community members. That is forming the decision for some of the politicians, right? Like, it's no longer about whether you're doing the right thing. And that's the really scary part, because our families don't deserve to be played with. Just really urging our Congress, our federal administration, to get it together and do something about it. And to go back to the point about Governor Newsom, right? I just want to share that my mom has been calling him Gavi. And you know what? You know why she has, like, built such a love for him? And I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with her fully in terms of, like, we're in the weeds policy wonk, so we see a different aspect of, like, our politicians. But in how our community witnesses it, right? She is really proud that he's actually out there as a governor saying something, pushing back against the Trump administration, especially as a result of the raids. And so just want to say to whoever is influencing his strategy and, like, working his communications to make sure that he's reaching populations like the Latino community. We know that we're a very big voting bloc across the state of California and the country, and he's gonna need that type of support to be with him. And so like, I'm pretty certain that you're gonna start seeing Gavi for president pretty soon. And we should trademark that ASAP.
Yeah, I heard your mom is the president of the Gavi fan club, no? Yeah, Gavi for president.
Her and all the church ladies, they are praying for Gavi.
Oh, dang.
That's all I gotta say.
A lot of prayers are going then.
A lot of prayers.
But I think again, the demand of what needs to be done. I mean, honestly, also just want to say, like, the people currently in charge on the federal level, which are Republicans, I can't remember a time in my lifetime where their goal has been helping people. Just gonna say that. You can check all the bills they've tried to do, which is nothing. But I think we need to really, really hound the state on this, because there was an opportunity this year to backfill about, I think it was like $130-something million in terms of funding loss from the federal government, some of the cuts they had made. We only put like 20-something. We did less than a quarter.
And
I was just going to say, I feel like the common thread from folks from the state, or, folks who have some decision-making power and leadership across spaces, I think the common thread is, like, they know they can't plug the hole on everything. And I feel like it's disheartening to hear that from them. Like, yeah, we know, but, like, we can make an effort.
Yeah.
And
also, I don't fully buy all of it. Like, obviously, I get they can't completely cover the entire amount of the federal government.
Yeah.
But when the governor announced $2 billion before we come back from recess, or before we, like, come to a budget deal on tax credits for corporations and for films, when you announce $2 billion and then we have a $12 billion deficit, excuse me? And then also considering that we have like $80-something billion in tax credits to corporations that we haven't touched in like 30 years. So I'm like, there are choices that are being made that I don't think are putting people in this moment first. And again, I'm not the one making all the decisions, but I have worked on budget for a good little time now, and I like there's money there to be made. There's money there to be gotten, and we don't even need to create new revenue. Let's just reallocate some of this funding. We didn't. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. And the one thing I do want to point out is that because who's telling us some of that stuff? Some of it is from the governor's office, but some of it is also from the legislature. And
Yep.
I think this is the most unique, in my experience at least, time where you have a brand new legislature, and you have a governor who's terming out, right? And then last time there was the class of 2012, where there's a significant amount of folks. Brown had already been in office for a while, and he wasn't leaving anytime soon, right? He barely was in the middle of his first term, still had a whole second term. This new legislature, who's going to be here for 12 years, just got here, and the governor's on his way out. So I think the negotiations are a little bit different. And in their first year, they're like, well, it's probably more of the sense of like, well, I'm just learning. I'm going to take it at face value, whatever someone's telling me, anyone's telling me.
Yep.
We've seen some of them push back,
Yes.
but a collective hasn't, right?
Yes.
And saying, well, no, this is my priority, right? She's not a freshman anymore. But Senator Menjivar was one of those people who pushed back and said, no, we could absolutely do more in the healthcare space. A freshman that did push back was Assemblymember Alawari, right? She said, no, I can't vote for this budget in good conscience because there's things that we should continue to do. And so I would curious, how else does that impact your strategy, given the dynamics of the governor, very seasoned, not as seasoned. We don't have a legislature as seasoned.
I appreciate that you framed it that way because I think sometimes, especially when you're a freshman to elected office, right? You obviously have party expectations, and in light of our governor potentially seeking higher office, he's not leaving the political landscape anytime soon. And what we may be seeing also is like a fear of potentially creating a tension between the governor and a first-year lawmaker, right? Especially when that governor is likely going to try to run for the presidency. And so just want to recognize that. However, and this is the biggest however, you were not elected to go with whatever whim the governor, even as big as the state of California, wants for you to do. You were elected to represent your community. And if your community is asking you, needs you to go out there and push for a more progressive California, which we know we do need, then that is your duty. Nothing else should be influencing your decision on whether or not you introduce a bold piece of legislation and you get it done. And that's why I think when we did see the incredible resistance that Senator Menjivar, Assemblymember El-Houari did last year and this year, I think it sets a tone for our first-year lawmakers, right? They have a really big opportunity to build a very strong progressive voting bloc. They do not have to, in my opinion, even cower, right, to a more moderate narrative. Because unfortunately, we have been seeing some of that happen where Republicans have pushed us so far right that we're now seeing Democrats move to the middle in response. And that should not be our response, right? Our message doesn't change. We shouldn't be creating these narratives of deservedness, especially when it comes to our undocumented population, on who deserves legal services. You deserve it if you're the exceptional immigrant, but you don't deserve it if you're the immigrant that maybe committed a crime, like potentially having your street vending be seen as a crime, right? Or working while being undocumented could technically be seen as a crime under this federal administration, right? And so I think in light of all of these different components, I think it's a really huge opportunity for our first-year lawmakers to talk to one another, to trust one another, and also to push one another to actually building a more progressive California and not just allowing the quote-unquote old-timers dictate the future of the next piece of legislation.
And I'm also curious to see how leadership's going to change a little bit on the Senate side, just with Monique Limon coming in as pro tem. What chairships are going to change, how people are going to be looking at committees differently. Will they be different? You know, how is that going to differ from, you know, previous leadership? I don't know. I'm kind of excited, but also, you know, she didn't back down from tough fights, and I hope that she continues the momentum, honestly.
Yeah.
She's a mom. She's a Latina. She's a woman. And I think there's a
feminist.
And I think there's a huge opportunity. I mean, I'm hearing that we'll likely hear some of the changes in the winter, potentially. You know, we come back in January, right? Second year of a 2-year legislative session. And so we'll hear pretty soon what her decisions will be as pro tem in terms of some of these big budget committees. And we're hopeful, right, that we get somebody who understands what our communities are going through, that is willing to take on that fight and not actually cower and go towards the middle, right? And if that is something that happens, I think it's gonna really inform our strategy as advocates on how much harder we need to push back, right? Because the solution will not be more cuts to Medical. It will not be more cuts to CalFresh. It will not be more cuts to our safety net that is keeping our economy afloat. And the moment we see that, I think is the moment that we will continue to push back and organize to make sure that we do not have a budget that actually goes against our California values. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
And also I think one thing I want to give perhaps just a little bit for like the current legislature over the last few years is that they have kind of really like leaned into the fact that like the governor's budget and his Jan 10 budget and his May revision, they're suggestions.
That's right.
That's not how that, like, the governor doesn't tell us what the budget is. That's not how that works. Right. I don't care if you run for president. I don't care if you run for president of the United States, executive board, your local YMCA. You don't get to dictate what our budget is. The legislature has the purse. And I think the Senate and the House, or the Senate and the Assembly, need to really focus in on like what is our values and what are we going to want in the budget. Like, and they've done a great job for the most part in pushing back and making sure that there weren't severe cuts to our social safety net here in California, especially a few years ago when we had a very large deficit. There were a lot of cuts to the social safety net that even beyond, like, unfortunately the social safety net reserve was part of the deal to make sure he didn't take everything else, because it didn't just stop there. And I think that's going to be a really big, really impactful aspect of this. But also I think it's going to be a willingness to look at revenue generation. And that's not meaning taxes on working people. They're already paying more taxes than they probably should. But there are people that aren't paying their fair share that really need to be brought back to the limelight. And I think a lot of times when we've had a lot of bills that have tried to go after or try to have some sort of revenue tax for wealthy people, and they never get out of committee. The hope is that we really start opening up that conversation, because those people just got the biggest tax break of our lifetime a few months ago.
Right.
And they don't need any more tax breaks from the state, especially when the state is going to have to pay and backfill to the greatest extent possible a lot of the money that's being taken away by the federal government. So we need to hold people accountable. Like, one, you don't work for the governor. You work for people. You work for everyday hardworking people that have to go to their job to make sure they can feed their families, and they're struggling. And the federal government is doing everything in its power because of the Republican leadership to make it harder for them to be able to do that. So your job as a state, how do we counter that to make their lives easier? Even if it's not 100% to 100%. If it's 90, if it's 7, if it's 80, obviously you want 100, you want 110. People are struggling regardless of what the federal government is doing. But the state has to be willing to step in. We're a donor state. We are a nation state in this world. We are the 4th or 5th largest economy in the world. And we also have a lot of income disparity. So we need people that are making a lot of money that aren't going to move anyway, because there's no data that suggests that taxing rich people more means they're going to leave. Anybody that says that hasn't looked at it, because when people don't live in California, they don't live in New York because of the tax system being favorable to them. They live here because they want to. They live in Calabasas because they want to. And we need to be willing to make sure that we can do what we need to do as a state to protect people that need to be protected.
And when I asked the question, it was like, well, kind of around bills, but I just want to give an observation to all the viewers and folks who've been paying attention. The reason why we all went in on the budget is because the budget really impacts kind of our legislative strategy, like a bill that we're going to propose or anything. And I think it is like we all now realize it as seasoned advocates. Like that's the biggest piece to a lot of what we're doing and a lot of the work that we all do, right? And then so with that being said, we've seen the governor kind of put pots of funding out a year. He'll push it a year, right? Whether it be a cut, whether it be additional funding. So he has a history of doing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
borrowing.
Huh?
Oh, I was gonna say borrowing
money, right? Yeah. And then and it's always out a year. So if he's historically done that, he has one more year left. Do we see him do that a little bit more this year, do you think? And then how does that play in the kind of conversations with the legislature? What are some of your thoughts on that?
I feel like he's going to do a lot of that'll be the next governor's choice to decide.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know why, but I feel like he's not going to want to make too many tough decisions given his ambitions. I feel like it could be a twofold. Like, listen. Like, we all have our own opinions. I feel like it could be a twofold. It could be either one, like, look, I'm going to say that I did these things really great and this is what I want to be known for. Or it's going to be like, hey, you know what? I've done a lot of great things, right? Like for him and his platform, that's, thinking from a governor's perspective, he's going to want to frame it that way so that the media gives him his flowers and he says, I've done this really great and I want it to be that. And the next governor can decide what these other challenges can look like. I don't know. That's what I think he could do.
I think this is a brilliant question, right?
Yeah.
Because
well, yeah, I thought of it. I mean,
I feel like
our host is cooking
strategically, if you're budgeting in the long term, right?
Yeah.
And you're getting the policy win in the near term, strategically, you want to use that to your advantage, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're running for the presidency of the United States, you want to say that you went and did everything you could, allegedly, the last year of your role as a governor of the state of California. And I think he is going to go big time. I don't know if, time will tell with how much our legislature will respond to his ideas, right? But I think it will be very strategic of him to introduce very bold ideas and budget for that in the long term, because he knows that if he does it that way, technically you don't have to implement it until 2030.
Yeah.
By that point, a new governor will have the opportunity to actually cut that program, right? Like, and so I would be very curious to see, Jan 10 and see if he does use this opportunity as a way to make big promises. Hopefully promises that he either fulfills in the near term, and if he doesn't, maybe is telling us something about his future vision for an alleged presidential run.
Yeah. I mean, in part, I think it's, to your point, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Because he's already been pushing things, doing something on the basis of it being in the future where he will never see it.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's sometimes a good argument for that, because there's the whole notion of plant trees that you will never live to sit under the shade of. Right. That's foundationally a good thing as a human society we should do. That doesn't always mean that means what he did was good, or that there's not severe flaws, and that it's something that's purely for the betterment of California. I mean, there are some proposals that he's done in the past that actually won't be going into effect until 2027, 2028. And they had flaws when they were being worked on. And he pushed them through, knowing that he'd be able to say that, one, it hasn't been implemented yet, two, no real work has been done on it, and there are a bunch of flaws, but nobody's going to remember that. Because by that time, he's already going to have been running for president. There won't be enough. You won't be able to hold his feet to the fire on it not working, because it won't have happened yet. Yeah. And that's going to be a thing. I mean, also, we look at the federal cuts. They timed it up to about 2027. So when we are having that 2028 federal presidential election, that they're going to blame the Democrats, because they're probably going to, I mean, barring a lot of the election interference they're going to be doing over this next midterm election, when they probably do lose the House and probably the Senate as well. And then we kind of have that, a little bit of a hopefully,
Yeah.
That's a far.
That's far out. But like, hopefully, if that does happen,
Yeah.
then we kind of run up into a stalemate. That they're gonna now that the Republican strategy will blame Democrats for all the things that we did when we first got into office and first had the House and Senate. And that's the whole. But that again, that's the strategy. You put things out far enough where you can blame someone else, but still take credit for doing the good thing. And that's what we've seen a little bit from him. And I think we're gonna see a little bit more of it.
Yeah.
And I think to the greatest extent possible, one, to have a long memory, but two, to
Yeah.
use that to our advantage. We know you want this, and we'll give it to you if you do it right. And that's going to be part of how we adjust. It's like, okay, you want X, Y, and Z. Okay, we'll support it because we actually like it. He'll pick a topic that people want something to do, want addressed, but then he'll have issues. It'll be late. It'll be rushed. It won't engage thought partners. So to the greatest extent possible, we have to expect the curveball, be ready to hit it, and then hit it out the park. Because while obviously he may want to fix something, but there's also the presidential ambition behind it, allegedly. We have to be ready for it, and we have to try to take it for what it may be and get the most out of it for California as we can.
I think we want to be a part of that legacy if that legacy is building a better California.
Exactly.
And I think it's a prime opportunity to like reach out to the governor. Hey, Chris, call the governor for us.
I'm gonna have your mom call him.
Hey,
Gabby, I need this. Gabby.
So yeah, I think I think when I think about that tree reference that you just made.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful idea, an idealistic idea, to think that he is thinking about what he's going to leave behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna stick to that.
I'm curious what you think, Chris.
Oh, well, first off, I just want to say you heard it here first that the Republicans are going to lose the House. Dubrea broke that news first.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
No,
if the bots don't get to people.
I think that there's a potential for a lot of small victories to happen, but they'll have a very big name recognition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a lot of one-time investments that are going to happen in this next budget? Like this budget, this current, the one that he just signed, there were a lot of those small victories that he was able to highlight and uplift, or the legislature was able to uplift. I unfortunately think that the freshmen will continue to kind of like pay attention to experienced members, but that's because they're only in their second year.
Mm-hmm.
You do get a little bit more like okay, I have a year under my belt. I kind of know how this like works a little bit more, but may not be as courageous in negotiations or holding a line that they may be wanting to see. I would say I think it depends on the spectrum of advocacy. I remember in his first year, and I can say it now because it's already been so many years, but in 2019, we were like, when we were having strategy conversations, we were like, send everything to his desk. It doesn't matter what it looks like. We're sending it all. We just need to know where he stands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, we're going to force him and we're going to give him good press, bad press. It doesn't matter. And there was conversations. I remember he signed bills that I was told he wasn't supposed to sign. And then, so we got tons of wins that first year. And then he kind of figured it out himself. I think some advocates are going to be like, all right, he does see himself as running as the presidential candidate. Send him everything again, because that's going to be a platform.
Mm-hmm.
Are you gonna veto these bills? Because that is going to be the last thing people will remember.
Yeah.
Right. And then so I think there are some organizations that are going to have that, but I will say, so when we're having the strategy conversation, some people are like, but if he does become president, we have access, right? As Californians, as California organizations, that means appointments to departments, and like you think not only Washington D.C., right? Mm-hmm. Sure, some of us may go to D.C. Not myself. That's not my scene, but. The federal government operates throughout the country, right? Mm-hmm. So there's regional offices. He can appoint you to a commission, and you can still be in California, and you can be very impactful, very critical. You can work for the USDA, tackle poverty and anti-hunger issues in California as a Gavin appointee, right? If he becomes president. So I think that's some of the advocates and lawmakers, I think, are kind of thinking that too. Well, like, I don't want to ruin this relationship.
Mhm.
So, but for us that don't have those aspirations, we're sending them everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, Gavin, get ready for 30 bills to be sent to your desk by the mess over the group.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, make like people support the notion that we should be taxing corporations and rich people more.
Yeah.
That's been the case for like 5-6 years. Like that's not a debate anymore. It's
Mhm.
literally just a determination made by people that are like actively against the wishes of the people that they represent, and we need to make them make that decision. Are you going to continue to tell people, hey, this is something we can't afford things. These people aren't paying their fair share. We saw it in the 2020 presidential election by former President Biden. It was part of the reason why he won, because he was like finally saying the quiet part out loud. Corporations aren't paying their fair share. We need to do that. And we saw it in the last election. Folks got away from that sort of talking, and it was more austerity. Let's keep things the same when people are struggling and people are citing, oh, the economy's doing great. I don't give a damn about the economy. A mother of two that is barely making ends meet, or a family that's barely making ends meet, they don't give a damn if the economy is doing well. They care about if they can afford groceries. They care about if they can afford gas. And also, gas was something that Trump, before he left presidency the first time, literally made a deal that would increase the price of gas a few years later, and then he could blame Biden for it. So that's, again, the strategy of the strategery. And we need to be aware of that and also be ready for those rhetorical efforts, and how people are talking about things. But to your point, people are going to be worried about the next thing. And sometimes it's hard to get the next job when you're not doing the first one right.
That's right.
Focus on the job you have right now, and that'll help you get the next one.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're going to end up trying to wheel and deal your way into nothing.
And,
Spoken like a true strategist right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of not doing their job right, so the federal government, and it kind of ties in because there's a lot of things happening at the federal government. For example, U.S. Department of Education has stopped providing funding for minority designated institutes, which is going to be very impactful to California. There's a ton of HSI, Hispanic Serving Institutes in California, and we're talking about millions of dollars per campus. But that's not a part of the shutdown. And then you have the shutdown on top of that. And then so I know some of us are tracking some of the things at the shutdown, and then also with the education. I know Carol could probably dive in a little bit more on the HSI funding and what does that look like for California?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's millions on the line. Just a quick number is 200 million is going to directly impact just community colleges. That's not including CSU, UC, private institutions. And those dollars go to serve these students, right? And so it's going to be a huge hit for our state. And honestly, I think it's on the basis of it impacting Prop 209. Like, we have Prop 209 here in California, which should be a layer of protection to be able to fight back. So I'm hopeful that this doesn't follow through. But when we're thinking about that level of funding, not going towards our institutions, not going towards our students, we start to see those institutions kind of fade away in their commitment to students. And a designation is impactful and empowering, because when you go to a school, you say, this school cares about me, or this school is going to like purposely do something to ensure that I feel comfortable and safe on this campus. And so to some extent, I feel like you're taking that piece from students too, right? Like I went to Sac State. It's very diverse. And so like as soon as you're there, you feel at home, right? They're are they NPCs? They have a lot of MSI designations. So like they intentionally serve students with the intent for them to feel at home and in community. And I feel like that's where we should be going as a country, not kind of pushing away from that. And so yeah, the MSI designation is going to impact Alaskan Native and Native Hawaiian community members, predominantly Black students, NAPZs, STEMs, HSIs, all of which, when you add the population together, that's largely a huge population of California residents.
And when you think about like the school environment, right? And you think about the significant steps that we've to get us to the point where we can be considered an HSI. Like
Yeah.
25% of your school enrollment of your student population, 25%, that is significant. I was at UC Davis when we became an HSI my last year.
Yeah.
And I remember how big of a celebration that was for us. There's still a lot more work to be done to ensure that those resources that schools, institutions are receiving as a result of that designation are actually going to the population of students who are now enrolled there. But this is a direct attack to take us in a direction opposite from that.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is concerning, because we're not only seeing that with the HSI money, HBCUs getting significantly cut as well. But just generally overall, the way that this federal administration is attacking our school environments, trying or higher education institutions, trying to push a certain type of curriculum, right? For our students to now be forced to learn, for our teachers to be forced to teach, is nothing like far. It's fascism. It's the easiest way you can describe this, what's happening under this administration, because we have never seen something like this before. At least not in recent or near term from a president of the United States. So
and him wanting to cut K-12 funding altogether too earlier this year. You know, like, how did we not sound the alarm back then?
I mean, part of it is that there's a combination of strategies. And like you were saying, they're not doing their job well. They are doing their job is different. Their job is terror. Their job is confusion. Their job is fascism. That's their goal. They've been trying to just blitz us with a bunch of information that most of it's not legal. Most of it's going to get killed in court. But that's just to beat people down mentally to where when the next thing comes, when they do find something that's actually legal, there's not willingness to fight against it. I mean, I think also what we're seeing with this funding fights, most of the stuff isn't even legal. And the goal is to scare institutions of higher education into capitulation to their demands, because they did it with they've done it for a long time, or they've done it basically since they started. They're threatening funding. We're going to cut your funding if you don't do this. We're going to cut your funding if you don't do that. If you don't get rid of this organization, if you don't get this diversity centric proposal. And what we need to do is incentivize courage and being willing to stand on, as the streets say, on business, but on standing on your values of like, we actually value diversity. We value our students of color. We value our Black, Latino, API students. And we as advocates need to encourage that, but also the state. Again, we can't backfill everything, but we need to encourage and be willing to fight to the greatest extent possible to make sure that these programs aren't, that when they can approach it legally, because they're not doing any of this through Congress. They're not passing any bills because they can't. They're not able to. They're not able to govern well.
Did we want to talk about the hot take on like how the governor used Cal grants to essentially tell higher education institutions like,
Compact
if you
agreement.
cave, you're not getting your money too. Which I know that was definitely stirring a lot of conversations, not only in our spaces, but generally across the state of California. People were paying attention the moment Governor Newsom announced that. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I feel like it was, I was proud that he did that statement, but at the same time, it's a slippery slope, because now you're setting up a stage where it's like, he's doing the same thing that they're doing to us. And now it's like, well, is our federal aid going to get withheld? Like, are higher institutions going to have to fear that maybe students won't get Pell Grants or other financial aid down the pipeline? And this is something that, like, folks are even considering, like, could that happen? Can that happen? And at this point, I feel like anything's up in the air at this point.
And part of me is like, I get the intention behind it. But like, you don't use fascism or fascistic tactics to fight fascism. That's not how that works. Like, the goal is community. Like, the goal is that we're all in this together, that we're all working towards the same goal. That's how you actually fight fascism. Because when you start saying, instead, somebody is being threatened to do something that they probably don't want to do with this thing, the answer probably isn't to threaten them
back
to do the other thing, because then it's just like, okay, who am I more scared of? It should be who am I more aligned with, and who am I willing to go to bat with? Who is willing to fight with me? Not, oh, I have to worry about them too. That's where I'm like, I get the idea, and I get what he's trying to do, and I get the bold move, that type of thing. But sometimes I feel like we're fighting fire with, we don't need to fight fire with fire. We need to fight the fire with fire, but we don't need to fight each other with fire to make sure that we're all fighting the fire the right way, because then it's just wasted energy, and it kind of gets away from the whole point. I mean, when we look at like history, people need to be together. That's how you stop this sorts of thing, because it's when people start to worry about just themselves, that's when we kind of start to lose. Because I mean, if again, they'll come for one group. We all have to be fighting against what's happening with ICE, and the fact that ICE is, I mean, there's always been a secret police force, but we all need to be fighting it back against ICE, because it's not going to stop with immigrants. They've been saying that it's not going to stop with immigrants, with undocumented people, or it's never been about that. It's about people we don't like. That's the goal, and they just start in just trans people, or people of the LBGT plus community. Like, it's going to be every single person they deem undesirable, and it's clear. And everyone, if one of us isn't free, none of us are free. Period. And that needs to be the baseline. And we have to work collaboratively towards a shared common set of values and a shared set of goals. If you're trying to threaten if you're threatening your partners, you're not getting anywhere. And so, sorry,
No, I like that. Can we put the people united will never be divided, like the little people chanting behind Dubrea and like in his speech?
We'll put that as a real. But you know, so and I'll just kind of end on this part, and so we can talk about the wick and snap. But you know, I get why the governor did what he did, because you know, if it's a UC, if it's a community college or CSU. There's some mechanisms that he has, because they're state, they rely on the state more heavily. They're public institutions, but you know, we're very explicitly talking about USC here, right? And so, and you know, it's great that you brought it up, because you're from South Central, so you get the agency to do so. But as a private institution, there's not a whole lot of that we can grapple with and hold them accountable for. And and historically, from my understanding, there have been other policies, and they might be in statute today, that have that trigger for that hold the Cal Grant as an accountability measure. That's saying, okay, if you do X, Y, and Z, then you're not going to get this funding. And so that's why I think that's why he went to that. I seen it written in policy, and I know it didn't pass in another iteration of bill. But from my understanding, I learned when I was learning about that, the author was like, "Oh, but we already do it in other cases." So there might be statute on that. I'm not
there's a
sure.
legacy admission bill from Ting from a few years ago.
I'm not as familiar, but I think he is privy to a lot of conversations happening amongst these chancellors, right? We unfortunately are seeing universities in other parts of the country capitulate
or cave,
to this administration. And what we don't want is for these types of big schools, universities, to do that and give the Trump administration a foothold here in the state of California. So I absolutely agree with you in terms of like standing together. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. However, when you're being met with fascism, I think I can understand where these types of ideas and strategies to push back hold some level of accountability to our universities, and who sometimes, you know, have struggled to stand with their students. And I think it's an opportunity for the governor to stand on the students' behalf to make sure that certain information is not being provided to the federal government. We're hopeful that our chancellors and presidents of our universities will stand with us without needing that type of incentive or withholdment of funds. However, he might be privy to conversations we might not be in the rooms to hear some of that dialogue. So,
and I also don't want to make it seem like we can fully fight what's happening from the federal government with the current levers of power that we have available to us. We're gonna need to get creative. The states are gonna need to get creative. I mean, they've done a lot of work of like as it relates to the Department of like Health, and making sure that the states are coming together to say, we're going to make sure people have access to accurate science-based information as it relates to healthcare. That's awesome. that's that's the type of stuff we could be doing, like to make sure that people have access to information and like again collaboration, not kind of force confrontation with people that should be on the same side. And I think there are going to be some of those things where the lines get blurred. Like there's a current ballot measure that the line got blurred on but it's a conversation we need to have and something that probably needs to happen if we're going to be able to, like I'm saying, hopefully win the House and win the Senate and those sorts of things. So that's where the lines of power are going to be blurred and the levers of power can sometimes be blurred, but we have to do it with the right intentions and do it with a shared goal.
Right.
And I think that's so like in that case, that may like specifically USC, like that might have been what was necessary. But I think it's just always how do we do this in a way that's collaborative and not confrontational.
Right.
How do we, and then sometimes you may have to get confrontational. That's just what's going to have to happen. But the fight must happen.
Right.
How you do it can be up for debate. The only thing that we can debate is that we have to fight.
Yeah.
And so the administration is fighting on us on a bunch of different things, but one thing that's very interesting, like I don't even know why they've already attacked SNAP so many times.
Yeah.
They're reattacking it in the federal shutdown, but they're also attacking WIC, like a very program that helps children develop. Right, and be healthy babies.
Yeah,
the pro-life party, by the way.
Pregnant moms.
The alleged party of pro-life, by the way.
I was just about to say.
They supposedly care about children, by the way. Allegedly.
And unfortunately, because of this shutdown, we are facing a very real crisis where our babies, our pregnant moms, our recent moms will not have access to WIC benefits. Now, I will say that supposedly, allegedly, this federal government is trying to come up with a way to circumvent so that WIC funding actually does happen. We're all going to wait and see until it actually happens before we say, yes, they got our sign off of like, thank you for funding WIC. The reality is that we wouldn't be here should they not be playing games with our families again, right? Yeah. And so while we appreciate the creative way to try to fund WIC, that's not the lever that WIC has traditionally, historically, legally has been funded through. And so I think it is a prime opportunity for this federal administration, for this Congress, to get it together, get to work. The citizens or the people that elected you to run this country are not waiting on you while you're taking a vacation during this shutdown elsewhere and focusing elsewhere. God knows what, right? I don't know what they're doing. Speaker
or canceling
Johnson,
votes,
right?
Yeah. Canceling votes for 3 weeks in a row.
I was actually recently
going in a
DC.
recess early because you don't want to take vote on the Epstein files. Like running from your job for wide variety.
Not paying people are. Oh my gosh! When I tell you that I was on a flight to DC and I saw the announcement that Burbank had to shut down because they no longer had TSA workers. The amount of anxiety I felt in my body getting on that plane and going to DC, it was probably one of the most amount of anxiety I've had boarding a flight. Because it's very scary. This is the type of situation we're creating across our country where our TSA workers are literally not being paid. Our air traffic controllers are not being paid for their labor.
Security,
like
our national security.
Meanwhile, ICE and DHS still gets their bonus benefit, etc. It's really a dystopian world that we're living in, and the fact that they're not doing their job and this is going to continue being our situation unless they do their job is really baffling. And the last thing I'll say, because I know you really wanted to bring this up, when I was in DC, hardly any of the museums were open. That is not the case with our national parks. What I'm hearing is that our national parks are open. However, there's nobody staffing it because they're all essentially furloughed right now. People are not being paid for their labor. So I know, Chris, you have some juicy ideas for us to...
I do want to point out that the last time the national parks were not staffed was under the Trump administration when the shutdown happened last time. And, I got family that lives in the desert. And the Joshua National Park, Joshua Tree, was one of the parks that was actually ruined because
Trashed.
the Joshua tree takes hundreds of years to grow, or like 100 and something years, and then people were like destroying the trees and burning the trees and doing all kinds of things to the tree, and so literally, trashing the humanity, the environment over there. But I understand that you're planning on getting married in the national park, and so they can.
No,
Or
this
what?
was an idea. This was an idea several months ago. Unfortunately, when we were experiencing so many delays as a result of this federal administration again, it was their website had gone down. You couldn't get permits in. I had a friend of mine who actually got married there this year,
Yeah.
and she had her permit canceled left and right, and she was just like, please, whatever you do, do not get married here. At least not under this administration, because you're literally playing with your marriage at this point. And so, but now I'm hearing that maybe it could be a prime opportunity to go without a permit and be there. But yeah, I mean, just
have Smokey the Bear as your groomsman.
all jokes aside, though, right? Like it is dangerous for our national parks not to be receiving the type of care it deserves, right? There are real important jobs that our park rangers traditionally do, like taking care of the Joshua trees, taking care of our known redwoods, sequoias, etc., taking care of our campers. And so yeah, things like that are what we're currently experiencing under this federal shutdown.
Yeah. Also, another thing to remember is that Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and that if they ever bring up a Democrat, it's because they're deflecting. This is all of the work of their doing. They have control to do all of this. They are passing their appointees, and they changed the rule to be able to force through a lot more appointees on a much quicker, because they would actually, when you actually heard what these people's qualifications were, you're like, and these are the people that are mad at DEI? And you pick this person? Okay. Oh, they're white. Okay, it's cool. It's never mind. But we have to remember that. And I just think it's, again, this is the goal: chaos, destruction. This is not the governance of people that care about our society as it exists. This is about this is governance by people that want to tear it down
and stay rich.
Fundamentally, to make sure that they can backfill those tax cuts they just gave to the richest people in the country, while also increasing taxes by thousands of dollars a year for poor people or people that are near the poverty line or at the poverty line. So got to remember that. Don't let that go unsaid. Don't let that go forgotten. That when we think about this, obviously nobody's saying Democrats are perfect. I will be the first one to have a lot of complaints, but this federal administration, this is a Republican regime. This is what Republicans do. Every single, basically the last, 3 recessions we've had, also the Great Depression, all were under Republican regimes, and the next person that had to fix it or try to at least rectify the shit was a Democrat. Just saying. A little bit of history for people.
And then, so as we always do on the podcast, we let our guests provide their final thought. And so this is your moment to kind of just, thinking about the last conversations we've had, and give us your final thoughts. So we'll start with Yesenia, and then go to Dubrea, and then we'll go to Carol, and then I'll close this out.
Yeah, I think my final thought really is on taking the time to reflect, right? We're really living through scary times. I won't go super in the weeds, but especially with family being in LA, we are still seeing these raids, regardless of like all the really great, incredible work that we have been doing to try to push back, all the legal services that we have been resourcing, and even all the mutual aid work happening across our state from everyday people, trying to push back against the terror that is that our communities are experiencing. And because of that, I just want us to remain in that fight, to not allow the terror on the streets to desensitize us from what is happening, to not push us to the point where we're not caring for ourselves. I actually decided to go to a bookstore the other day because it was just overwhelming, what has been happening, and sometimes it tries to make you feel small. It tries to make you feel like there's nothing you can do to push back against this terror. However, doing everything you can to take care of your mental wellness, to take care of the wellness of your family is a part of the strategy to push back against this type of terror. So I just wanted to say that. And the last thing is, of course, we recently lost an ancestor, Asada Shakur. She joined the ancestors, I should say. And I'm again reminded of her revolutionary spirit, of the fight that she took on while living in this country, and then eventually when she was living in Cuba. And so it just reminds me about the urgency of staying in the fight,
Mhm.
and really we don't have anything to lose but our chains. So I'll just leave with that.
I mean, for me, I think first and foremost, take care of yourself. To everyone watching, make sure you come up with ways to self-care, those sorts of things. Even if it's going for a walk, touching grass, whatever, playing video games, do something to remind yourself that, like, despite everything that's happening, you can still live to the greatest extent your life. You are still a human being. They can never take that away from you. It doesn't matter what the situation is. And beyond that, I also want to make sure people remember that at a time like this where fascism is knocking on the door, that the only real way we fight it is together. You're not alone. And when you can support people, like if you're a citizen or have legal status, or if you are, or at least you're not on the list of people that ICE is going after right now, do what you can in terms of mutual aid to make sure people have what they need. People are struggling. Everyone's struggling, but we have to do it this is all a big group project on how to maintain our democracy. And we everyone is going to get their own score, and we have to do our best part. Like, and sometimes your thing may be, hey, do you need somebody to go grocery shopping for you? Or do you need somebody to, like, even if, like, again, like, you don't need to buy it for them, but like if you can take the card, make sure you go because they're worried about leaving. Whatever, do your part to make it, because that also helps it create the sense of community that we need right now. And unity is the only way we're going to be able to get through this. Because if we're all trying to do it, I'll do my thing, you do your own thing, we're gonna lose, and we can't afford that. And we all need to be in on this together. And I think, again, as always, choose people over politics, choose people over corporations, and people power is the only way out of this.
Dang, it's hard to go after that. I just love what both of you said. I would take it a step further and say about finding peace as like find joy, find happiness, make time for like laughing. Like the other day, I was laughing so hard. I was like, damn, like I haven't been laughing. Like what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
So like we need to find peace and take care of our mental health, but also make space and time for joyous occasions, to share a meal, to laugh, to smile, to cry of joy. Because I think life has been so hard where we have to make those spaces and times where, like, yeah, we can also be joyous in a time of hard times. I was reminded of that when I was in Chicago for Poderistas, and that was during like all the ICE raids. They haven't really stopped, but it was like at the peak when folks were being pulled out from apartment buildings, and you know, like, it's insane to see a community just have so much will and power, and people afterwards they're like, well, we're gonna still do our thing and we're gonna celebrate our own thing and we're gonna continue, you know. And I'm just like, the resiliency that people have just surprises me. But to your point too, is like we have to do a lot of what we're doing together. And like you said earlier in the podcast, like it's not about you or me or skin color or whatnot. It's like we have to be united, and it's not just one person's fight, it's all of our fights. And I love your comparison about the project. Yeah, it is all of us, and if we start to divvy up on little things, it's just gonna be easier to tear down. So I really appreciate what you shared. And the last thing is just continue to stay involved, whether it's small pieces, whether it's showing up for the special election, dropping off your ballot, you know, helping your neighbor out to ensure that they're voting, you know, whatever you can do. It's important for us to continue the fight because it's an ongoing one, and I know it's going to be tough, but we just have to make time to stay engaged.
And then for me, I what's really fresh in my mind right now is I just got back from last week, I believe. Yeah, last week. from Tijuana. I went with Loyola Law School's Immigrant Justice Clinic and their binational migration project. And we were at some local shelters providing the students and the professors were providing legal service consultations to folks who had just recently been deported. And so continuing on the humanitarian, continuing on the group project where it doesn't stop at this side of the border. It doesn't stop in California. My heart is with the folks that are in Tijuana right now who had a lot of questions or just trying to figure out what just had happened to them, more concerned about their loved ones in the States, but knowing there's this invisible wall that divides them now. But my heart is also with the folks in Chicago and DC who have had the National Guard terrorize their neighborhoods, right? DC folks
Baltimore.
Baltimore. I didn't know about Baltimore. But I had actually
Georgia.
I didn't know about that one either.
Yeah.
Well, my hearts are with them too now. So
Yeah.
thank you. But Chicago more so because I have some friends out there and I actually were talking to them. And then one friend was lives in Texas, but all her family's in Chicago, and she was there. And I mean, we in LA California haven't experienced National Guard, ICE jumping out of Black Hawk helicopters, but it happened in Chicago. The way you would have to enter in buildings in Chicago is much different than how you have to enter in California and Los Angeles. And it literally was an active war zone. It was an active war zone in LA, but we didn't have people jumping out of helicopters, jumping in windows and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, we're not in this alone. And I will say that I know that there's advocates from California who powwowed and strategized with folks from Illinois and Chicago prior to the what we see now. So, humanitizing all of our communities, regardless of where there's a border in between or not, is my final thought today. So as always, thank you everybody for being on the podcast. It was really great to have you. And tune in next time if you're listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.